Guys, alright. I'm just gonna record some back-to-backs here. Um, so I liked one of the questions that, oh my gosh. Should I incriminate myself? I'm debating about this one. It's kind of okay. So I liked Eli Yoder's video, so far of what I've seen with one of the Miller, family people. Um, One of the questions they had about like in the Amish was like what rules did they break? I mean like I think I broke all the rules, honestly. Like I'm not talking about like biblical rules. I mean like traditional rules. Like what rules got broken that the traditions said not to do, but that maybe mainstream, it wasn't like illegal, like, but what rules got broken? I think a lot. Like I can't think of like definitely I listened to music that was, parental advisory and had like cursing and profanity. I was really into hip hop and rock and like, like Green Day and Wu-Tang and like Source magazine and like, a lot of different types of magazines and things and like Rage Against the Machine and like all kinds of stuff that Metallica, like I was, that is not what we were like raised to be like trying to listen to, but also because I was pretty musical and I like to venture outside of like traditional like church music, you know. And when you're trying to build skills, church music isn't really the kind of music you go for. It's like if you really want to learn skills of like different types of like advanced music playing, like you're not usually listening to like hymns and like traditional like contemporary Christian music. Like you're usually gonna branch outside of that because a lot of that type of music has not really evolved at all since like the 80s. And hymns are even older than that, and so it's like they don't really evolve that much. Like they kind of just stay like they are, and people make kind of more contemporary versions of hymns, but it's like they all kind of come from I don't know what tradition hymns come from, but I do think it comes from like Irish kind of other types of um like European Scandinavian type people, music traditions and things like I don't know how, like folk music of that time, of like early people who came to America and stuff. Like it's like European influenced, I believe. I need to look into the details of that because I'm not 100% sure, but it's like I used to always just tease and say like, oh, like, the pastors or whatever are like on our case for listening to our music, and then like these songs are like drinking songs from like like Irish drinking songs from like you know the past or whatever, that they kind of like adapted into some familiar tune. Like, no, I don't think all hymns are like that, but I do believe that there is some truth to that there were some kind of tavern type of like ballads and like folk songs that were like popular, that got like the tunes were familiar and got introduced and into like the lyrics got changed, of course, but it was like the tunes were familiar to like the mainstream or some version of some portion of the mainstream. So yeah, music wise I was definitely just doing my own thing, but I was very knowledgeable about the church music too. Like I was raised on the stuff. We sang those songs like every freaking day. Like sometimes we'd sing them in school, like for worship at school. We'd have worship every single day at school, every morning. And probably one of the first classes we had was like Bible or whatever. Fridays we'd have chapel. Saturdays church. Friday nights usually it was like some other type of thing. Like once we got a little older, we'd go to like youth groups and stuff, and so that kind of music was very ingrained in us. Like We knew the music, like we would sing it, all the time. So, um, it wasn't like I had to go out of my way to learn those songs. Like, and they do change, but because there are like religious artists and stuff, but it's like the music doesn't really evolve that much. Like, um, so yeah, just like the music was definitely not part of the conservative traditions. I just followed my own heart on what I wanted to listen to and didn't do it in front of people who didn't want to hear it. Like, I didn't come bumping into the parking lot of church listening to Metallica. Like, I'd listen to like Sonic Flood or like OC Supertones and PAX 217 and that kind of stuff. It was Christian music, Christian musicians, but you know, like Mercy Me and those kind of groups, or like listening to The Fish because it was LA, 95.9 The Fish, stuff like that. Uh, I don't know what else. I feel like I broke every single rule, honestly. Like when it came to like Sabbath stuff, like keeping the Sabbath, like my family always went out to eat and stuff, and that is something that I've seen other churches start to do later on. But when I was growing up, a lot of times I had friends, family friends who didn't even cook on the Sabbath. They cook everything like up until Friday night, and then all your meals would be like Friday, you'd have like your traditional dinner, and then Saturday before church, whatever you have for breakfast. I don't really know. I don't remember being at their houses for like Friday night to Saturday. Usually if we did sleepovers, it was like Saturday night to Sunday. Um, but yeah, usually your Friday nights and Saturday mornings were kind of like more family time. Um, I think, I don't think I ever really strayed too much from that until I started college and I started like going out on Friday nights, outside of religion. But even, I think I mentioned this before, like we would even, because I had a lot of religious friends, and like sometimes it was like, if you want them to come, we would be like, let's do like a Bible study or something. Like literally, we would have like Friday night Bible studies in like my 20s, like that. Instead of like going out to bars and stuff and clubs, like we'd be like studying the Bible, like, cause we like that's the kind of people I was around. Like we weren't all allowed to do things, so I did learn to kind of bend towards the most, like traditional people and just kind of do what it was that they were allowed to do. Um, but in our own household, we definitely didn't like make a big deal out of that kind of stuff. Um, it was more like whatever brings the family together. So it was kind of nicer to kind of like go out to eat after church and stuff if we didn't have like a planned like church potluck or something. We ate meat. Africans, I grew up eating meat. Like not all Africans eat meat, but it's, very, culturally we definitely eat a lot of meat. It's not like too much meat, but it's like I grew up eating more meat than most people I knew. Um, like we'd have barbecues on Sundays a lot growing up, and then like after sports and stuff, and then yeah, like my dad's a heavy meat cooker. Um, but I also grew up around schools where the hot lunch was, the lunch for the day was never meat based. Like they never had meat based meals at that school. It wasn't even an option. And like I mentioned, like, we never saw meat at our church potlucks except for that one time when somebody brought KFC. And then I remember later on, like in probably grad school, there was a church I went to with a lot of Tongans and minority like black people and Latinos, and like they had like it out like for their anniversary church service. It was like always themed. So I think one was like Western themed, and they had like bales of hay, and like people have like cowboy hats on and jeans and like flannel shirts, and like it was just kind of like a dress up kind of have a fun thing, like invite your neighbors. It's like a barbecue, and they'd have like the band and the music and stuff, and it would all be outside, and like they had like a cookout kind of thing. And so they have barbecue, and they had choice between like vegetarian and like meat, but usually other than those few times, it wasn't very traditional. And even when those happened, it was really like, ooh, they're serving meat. Like, and people said stuff about it. They're like, oh, you go to that church that they have meat sometimes. And it's like, even though it was like a once, maybe I saw this, probably not even, I don't even think it was 7 times in my whole entire life. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 times that I remember actually seeing meat, like in like a church function at all. Maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe even like 2 or 3 times. Like, I really don't remember it that much. Um, I remember once being really, really hungry, and we used to rent out this Sunday church. And Friday night, one of our Friday night Vespers events overlapped with theirs, with their Friday night event. But I think they were outside skateboarding and playing basketball because the church parking lot had courts on it. So when people wouldn't park on the back parking lot, people could basically play basketball. So I remember we were inside, like, singing songs and like reading the Bible and stuff, and then like those kids were outside and like they were like playing sports and like skating and stuff. And like, I grew up around a lot of skaters, like, beach cities in LA, like everybody freaking skates. Like, it's not like out of the norm. And so, especially back in like the 90s and stuff. And so I remember that, and they had like music playing, and it was like kind of like punk rock music, but it wasn't like loud. It was just like on like a radio outside or something. And so we were kind of like, I don't know if we can socialize with them because they're playing sports. And like, I think one of their youth pastors ordered pizzas, and they ordered like, I don't know, let's say it was like Pizza Hut or something, and they set them up outside on the tables. And we went to eat the pizza, and then we realized it was pepperoni pizza. And because people don't really eat pork, some people, I think, from our group ate the pork pizza, and then most people just were like, oh, we don't eat that, even though I remember we were starving, and because we had been there. And like, usually we would eat dinner like after these services and stuff. It was like a youth service of some kind, so it was like one adult or two adults like chaperoning, but otherwise it was just a whole bunch of like probably 30-40 teens. And they had fewer teens than us, but they ordered a whole bunch of pizza, and I think it was all pepperoni. I don't remember if I ate or not. I feel like there were times when I did eat, but I feel like that time I didn't eat it. And just because I remember one time at least being like really hungry and being like, dang, man, like, just like didn't eat it because it was pork, and it was also the Sabbath. It was just like a whole thing. And I was just like, man, like, not only eating pork on the Sabbath, but eating pork on the Sabbath at the church, it's like, already we can't play sports, and we can't like skate, and we can't play basketball. And those kids probably thought we were so weird. They're like, okay, you're not going to play basketball with us, you're not going to skate with us, you're not going to talk to us, you're not going to like really like jam along with the music with us, and then you're not going to eat any of our food. Like, it was kind of just like, what? But it was just, I remember that one night specifically. And then yeah, I don't really remember. Like, I think we gave the other kids like a bad impression because I feel like we didn't really interact with those other kids too much. Like, we were so different from them that I felt like it was weird. I was just like, this isn't normal, guys. Like, we should probably be a little more like open-minded and like, socialize some and like bend a little bit. But I know there was so much pressure to just like not, like, that's how much it was. Like, even as like teenagers, you're like, and it wasn't because of the pastors would say something, or like nobody would probably say something to you, but it was just like, you would really get that sense of like, I need to stick to what I was taught. I need to stick to these traditions. But I think there were other times when like something similar happened where like I remember kind of wanting to be a little more like interactive with the other groups and just being like one of the kids who ate the pizza or one of the kids who did the thing that like was against the tradition or whatever. But like I don't really remember. It's such a blur. But yeah, food wise and stuff like that, like it's stuff that you don't really think about because we're kind of like insulated, like raised around people who always did the same things, thought the same. Like if our youth pastor would have ordered pizza, they wouldn't have ordered ones with pepperoni. Like we would have just automatically assumed we could eat all of this pizza because none of it has meat on it, like we would have eaten every single type of pizza, some people might have stayed away from like Cokes and caffeine and, Mountain Dews and, those types of sodas and teas and coffees and that kind of stuff. But that's a little more subtle. Like it was a little more subtle. Like we did have soda in our generation. I feel like some older generations didn't really have a lot of like sodas and like caffeinated drinks, but I remember that wasn't like a big deal. Dang. Yeah, music, food, buying stuff, like I wasn't too heavy. Like I don't think I ever really went like shopping like at the mall. Like me and my friends would hang out at the mall, but most of my friends I hung around the mall with were religious friends, so we kind of never really hung out at the mall on Sabbath because we were always busy at like youth group on Friday nights or like our bands Saturday afternoons and stuff. Like, so we were never really like available to really go to the mall until like night on Saturday night or whatever time the sun went down. Even when we were going to watch movies, we would never choose movie times that were during Sabbath. And Friday nights, we never really chose to go and do a lot of stuff that was, on the Sabbath, unless it was church pre-planned. And our church and all the churches in the area always had stuff that was pre-planned. So up until college, I didn't really start going out. Probably till sometime around like 2003, 2005 or so, I started actually going out a little bit on Friday nights. But a lot of times it was with like religious friends that kind of like more understood me. Like there were maybe like a couple sprinkles of like the kids from, well, like the 20 or something year olds from like the community college, but mostly it was like friends that I grew up with in the church, but maybe they went to other churches. And so we kind of all knew the rules, but like, we'd maybe go out to dinner, stuff like that, like just roam around the beaches at night, like the boardwalks and stuff. But we didn't really get up to much. We didn't go to like bars and clubs and stuff like that. Like even though we were of age, we just never really hung out in those types of environments much. I had friends that did drink. Most of my Latino friends, not most, but like, I think I had some Latino friends who their families used to have like family parties almost every Saturday night, and they would have alcohol there, and it was usually in their backyard and stuff. Like it would be like a cookout, kind of like, sometimes they'd order like someone to do like the grilling, like the taco meat and like making the tacos and stuff. They'd have like a little vendor there that would like make the food and stuff, and like I would just eat like everything. But they did that pretty often. I want to say at least once a month, if not almost every single weekend. And I would just go over there sometimes when we didn't have other plans. We'd be like, let's go over to this family's house. And like they knew my family, and like we'd go over there. But I remember a lot of us didn't drink because it was kind of like against what we did back then. Like I'd tasted alcohol, but I was never really into it. I think people mostly let me taste like IPAs and stuff like that. And I never really liked the flavor of it. So I never really got into drinking until I learned, probably until like closer to grad school, honestly, because I learned more about like what I liked. Like I think when I did start drinking, it was in grad school, and it was cider, because I remember liking cider. And then definitely got into like soju, sake. I feel like I knew about sake a lot, but I can't remember the first time I tried it. But I know like I was raised around so many Japanese people. I'm pretty sure I had sake before in my life. Because I remember when I started drinking it in grad school a little more like regularly, it wasn't unfamiliar to me. I just can't place when I first had it. Like, I feel it was at some kind of traditional thing, but I don't, like maybe at a wedding or something. I really don't know. But, yeah, I was more familiar with like sake, but, just because culturally I was around it more than any other type of alcohol. But otherwise, I was never really around alcohol. I was never raised around it, or like, it never really came up as part of my life, other than at that one family's house for the most part. It never really came up. Smoking, drinking, none of that stuff. Like, I remember like smoking and like weed and stuff, and like I had a lot of friends that were into weed, like probably when I was close to like 16 or something, and like smoking at Venice Beach and stuff like that. And like We would do all kinds of stuff like that, but I don't know what I really thought about it. Um, I think I thought it was wrong because I remember the first time I tried, I think the first thing I ever tried was like a cigar, and then it was like, I remember I caught a cold like the next day. It was probably because I was sharing it with people who probably transmitted the cold to me. But I kind of was like, oh, this is like God punishing me because I had a cigar, like, and I think I got a cold like within like 24 hours or something. From what I remember, the first time I had some of a cigar. Um, and then I remember, yeah, I just kind of remember that. And then I remember the first time I had weed, I was at Venice Beach. I don't know how old I was. I wasn't driving yet, but we used to take the buses around, so I must have been in high school. Um, but I don't know. It was just kind of like with friends that were like, I don't know. I had some kind of like beach bum type friends, like the surfer types, that it was kind of a different community of religious people because they were kind of like a little like, most of them went to public schools and most of them were like, yeah, they're religious on the weekends, kind of thing, but they had like a whole public school lifestyle. And so I was introduced to some of their friends, just because, they all were at like the public schools. So more of the people who lived at the other beaches, like the ones closer to like LAX area, like the friends who lived over there, they were kind of more into like weed and smoking and stuff like that. And I mean, I do it with them, but I don't remember how often, in all honesty. I feel like it was often, but I can't really put a finger on it. But I mean, we weren't supposed to be doing that, but also like I never really saw anything wrong with it. I was like, oh, it's a plant. I never really, we were taught to like consume plants, like, well, why can't we have this one, like, why can't I just smoke this plant, and back then it's like weed wasn't legal. I don't know where they were getting this stuff. I never like carried it on me or anything. They would have it with them and we would just do it at the beach for the most part. I don't remember any other places where we did it other than the cigars. But I really don't remember. I was never really too into smoking. Especially because it was like, well, I'm not going to get my hands on it. I'm not going to bring it home. So it was like, well, if I'm not going to own it, like, it was just never something I really got into. Same with drinking. It was never really something I got into. I was allowed to drink caffeine, but it was kind of like, I was kind of a little bit like, I don't know if I should drink coffee. There was kind of like a bit of a taboo around drinking coffee a little bit. And then tea was kind of more of a cultural thing, like on the African side of the culture, so I kind of drank tea growing up for breakfast almost every day. And then being around a lot of Japanese people, I learned a lot about different types of teas later on. So I definitely drank tea, but I didn't start having coffee too much until college. And it was more like I used it so I could study. No other real reason. Yeah, I have a weird relationship with caffeine. And then, yeah, I don't know. Those are the things that come to mind about like rules being broken. Like we kind of broke all the rules, but sometimes we didn't, like, and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I was like really kind of like sticking to kind of what I felt like I needed to do or wanted to do. And I don't know if I would say that I kind of led a very conservative lifestyle. I would say I always kind of led a lifestyle where I wasn't very open with what I was doing, like with other people. Like I wouldn't always, like I wasn't very open. Like I kind of learned to be very secretive about what I did. And so I would hang out with certain people and we would like do certain stuff together, but we didn't like talk about it with other people. I don't know, like there was a lot of kind of stuff. I can't, I don't know, there was some stuff like internet, like going on the internet on the Sabbath, like that was a big thing that back then people didn't really do. too much. Like now that it's so integrated, like everybody's online and everything, but back then, like, we didn't really listen. It wasn't really traditional, like, for people to listen to like secular music or secular TV shows. Like you could watch like National Geographic and things about nature, but like after the stuff about nature, you're kind of pushing it. Like, and you could even like sports. We weren't really allowed to play sports, but if you just wanted to like hike around in nature and like go on nature walks or like go to the park and hang out at the park, play on the swings and like be at the park and stuff like that. Like we were allowed to kind of play on the equipment and stuff, but we weren't really allowed to play basketball or football or anything like that. But yeah, I don't really remember doing too much. like it was kind of weird. Like I don't remember breaking too many rules. Like it was kind of weird because it was like we would all break them together. It was like, yeah, we would play sports and stuff on the Sabbath, but it was like somebody would always come out and yell at us and be like, stop. Or like if one parent saw, like we'd be at like some random person's house, and if one parent saw that there was like a more religious kid there, they'd be like, you guys can't be playing sports. We all kind of knew it was like, oh, because this person's here in the group. Otherwise, if they weren't there, that parent would have just allowed us to just do whatever. So like even the parents kind of knew like which families were kind of like what, and so they would kind of like make sure that if it was at their house, that the other kids were kind of like not getting pressured to do stuff they weren't supposed to be doing, even though it wasn't it wasn't illegal. It's not like wrong, but it's just like traditionally it wasn't really like something that people would promote. And so there was like a lot of that, like a lot of like knowing what we should or shouldn't do, and knowing that this is going to get shut down and they're going to tell us to stop doing it, but we'll just do it till they tell us to stop, kind of thing. And yeah, with the movie choices or things like going to Not Scary Farm or like participating in Halloween. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there were plenty more. I'm kind of tired. I don't really know what else, but yeah, those are the main ones I can think about, and it's kind of, that's just a glimpse of what it looks like, if you grew up in a traditional Adventist community. It's kind of like, those are things that come up, where you're just like, I know I'm not doing the right thing here, according to what, I was taught, but ultimately it's like, you're not really doing anything wrong, it's not gonna like hurt anybody if I'm like eating pepperoni pizza, like I'm not gonna be breaking somebody's heart because I ate pizza or because I drank coffee or because I cooked on the Sabbath or had a hit off of a joint. Like I'm not, it's not getting in anybody's way, and so I really don't feel like it's something wrong, but it's like traditionally, we were always taught to like stay away from stuff. I'm kind of surprised that we never really got into like bars and clubs too much, like especially like living in LA. It's kind of like interesting that like none of us really gravitated towards that. But we kind of liked hanging out in our local community that didn't really have a lot of that, honestly. It wasn't like Hollywood or anything. Like there really wasn't a lot of nightlife where I was raised, and so we kind of just entertained ourselves, and that worked out just fine. We found ways to get into a little bit of trouble here and there. Like I know we did other stuff, but there's some stuff I'm not gonna really post about because it was just, it was more than myself involved, and I think it's identifiable. Like I don't really know how else to say it. Like there's a lot of stuff that happened that I just don't want to talk more details about, but some of it I was probably alone in, and then others of it was other people that I was, we were all together on these choices. And so, and there were some times where we did get into a lot of trouble. And, we could kind of tell like the pastor was like mad at us and stuff. But, yeah, I remember once the pastor got mad at us for going to 7-Eleven. Like I'd never really seen him get too mad, but he was really upset that like we had gone to 7-Eleven. Like, he came back to check on us, and we weren't, like, in the building where he had left us, and then he saw us all walking back from 7-Eleven because we had, like, snacks, like hot dogs or whatever, and he was, like, very upset. Because, it's meat, and it's the Sabbath, and, like, we're purchasing things, and, like, so I think the next times he had, like, snacks available for us, and, like, stuff we could eat. And I remember they always had, like, healthy stuff. It was always, like, granola, and apples, and carrots, and hummus, and, that kind of thing. Like, we never had, like, snacks, like sodas and Snickers and all that. Like, he would always bring, like, actual, like, healthy fruits and vegetables and, mixed nuts and all kind of stuff like that. Like, so we would eat good. Like, it was good food. Like, none of us complained, of course, but, like, it was, like, healthy food. And so, we ate a lot of, like, that kind of stuff for snacks too. So it was like, instead of going and getting, like, chips and hot dogs and Slurpees and all that, he would bring, like, apples and fruits and, all kinds of, like, raw veggies and, like, dips and stuff like that. And, like, it was pretty healthy. Like, I rarely saw him buying, like, pizzas and that kind of stuff. Like, he kept it, like, super healthy. But yeah, like, that kind of thing. It was kind of like, we would do stuff where it was like, that's not acceptable to go buying food on the Sabbath. And the type of food you're buying makes it almost, like, worse because it's not healthy food. Like, 7-Eleven isn't really, like, now they have a little bit of healthier options, but I feel like then they didn't. Like, now you can get, like, boiled eggs or, like, perfect bars or, like, Cliff bars. Like, you can kind of find stuff that's like juices and stuff, water. Like, they do have apples, bananas. Like, they do have stuff that's, like, a little bit better for you. I don't know if they had that when I was growing up or if I just never looked for it, but they do have stuff that if you want a little bit of, like, some fruits and veggies or eggs or something like that, like, you can get something a little healthier and less processed and just junk food kind of stuff. But yeah, kind of like what you ate and kind of like how you tended to your health. I mean, I don't know of many other religions that are very like that, especially in Christianity, that are very, like, strong towards, like, that was something that I actually really liked, is that there was that accountability with what you would eat and stuff. Like, you didn't want to be the one that was, like, never eating healthy food, or, like, that your parents, like, you'd invite your friends over and you never ate healthy food. Like, there was kind of a little bit of pressure to, like, eat healthy. At least when you're, like, in the presence of other people, like, you kind of, like, eat healthy. Like, when I did get older, though, we would eat at, like, mall food courts, and, like I said, like, 7-Eleven, Del Taco, like, we would eat unhealthy stuff, but, it was never, like, encouraged. Like, it was kind of like, okay, if there's a healthier option a block away, let's walk the extra block and go eat that. And even being young doing that, like, when you're, like, in your teens, like 15, 16 years old, and just knowing, like, oh, I have vegetarian and vegan friends with me, let's go to this other place and we can get, like, vegan food, and, like, just being raised around things like that, it was just I think it's very unique, because, I mean, even though it's LA, Southern California, like, it's not uncommon to be around people who are, like, trying to eat healthy, but even, like, back then, like, we kind of knew, like, okay, I prefer to put this kind of stuff in my body, and this is kind of, like, good for me, and, like, like, being a teen and, like, a young adult and making those kind of decisions is very different, like, we weren't, like, trying to destroy our bodies and, like, like, smoke and drink and all that kind of stuff. Like, we kind of actually were consciously making decisions towards health a lot of times. But yeah, there's a lot of rules that we broke, like, a lot of stuff that we ate that we weren't supposed to be eating, and, like, different stuff like that, where it was kind of like, like, this isn't, like, okay for us to do, it's not healthy for us to do. Yeah, but I guess those are the things, the types of things that we would get up to that kind of were breaking the rules, that I think I can talk about, that isn't really incriminating. But yeah, yeah, there were some other serious times, though, that were kind of more like, you know, like, I don't know, like, it was never anything, like, illegal or bad or anything, but, like, there's some rules that are maybe seen as more, you know, uh, like, if you decide to buy a pack of Cheetos versus, like, eating a banana at a 7-Eleven, like, somebody might kind of, like, look at you like, I know that you made this decision over that, but nobody would really, like, you know, say anything. But, you know, there would be other stuff that I think people would be more like, okay, you did that thing, you know, like, it would kind of maybe get you, like, some points taken away, you know, if some other people found out. Um, and so that's why, you know, I'd rather not even say, even if it was like 20 something years ago, like, you know, because there are still people that are very connected with this religion. And, you know, the people who I know, I mean, everybody kind of knows who hung out with who, so um, I don't want people to have to try to narrow it down. But, yeah, so that's all I'm going to say with that kind of breaking the rules stuff. Those were like some general things that you would see people just doing. And the reason why I like to talk about it is just because, like, with mainstream America, this is not like normal teenage and 20 something year old behavior. Like, you know, it's so different, you know, it's just a subculture of people that just like lives their own thing and they're just doing their own thing. But there is kind of that like community of it, and a lot of times, like, sometimes I didn't really understand, like, especially with the sports. I think that was one of the hardest things for me to understand, was like, why can't I play sports on the Sabbath? It's healthy. Isn't it healthier for me to play more sports on the Sabbath than to not play them? But, you know, they really were trying to train us with like rest days, and like, I do still value that a lot, just like, you know, having a day of rest and that kind of thing. Like, I don't really talk too much about what I do or what I don't do and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and I change it up from time to time. It depends. Like, sometimes I do absolutely nothing, and sometimes I'm pretty like, um, you know, strict about things just for my own self, but it's usually like a form of self-care. And, you know, I like rituals. I'm really into like rituals and like traditions and stuff, but I don't really like it when it's like group decision of, you know, like, we need to follow this thing, and like, I'm really not feeling it, and then somebody else is trying to like push me. Like, I get it when it's like your friends trying to like push you towards like your own health goals and like help you be like, oh, like, you know, you said you wanted to do this, you said you wanted to like wake up early and like go to sleep on time, and like, I think even now that's something that I do for sure, is like the waking up early, and like, there's just a lot of traditions that I've kind of stuck with, that it's maybe not even an Adventist thing, but just kind of having like a balanced schedule and stuff like that. I'm very like into that kind of thing. It works for me. You know, I don't like to be out late at night. I don't like to be all caffeinated late in the evenings. I don't like to be up too, you know, late in the morning. I like to eat my meals on times, you know, like, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not here to like preach to people what they should or shouldn't do. I'm more talking about my own faults and like some struggles with stuff that, you know, I just it never really resonated with me, some of it, and then others of it, it was a struggle to kind of not do. And then others of it, like, I don't think I really felt a whole lot of peer pressure. Even when it was like religious friends that were like, let's go break the rules and go do this thing, and like, I was usually able, if I didn't want to do it, I'd be like, I'm not gonna do it. Like, I always kind of thought for myself, and was never really kind of, actually, no, there was something I did do, but I don't think I thought it was wrong. I thought what I was doing was like, because I was kind of pulling a little bit away from like the church, and so there were some things I did that were a little bit like buying people stuff, because I used to hang out at like Venice and certain places where like they weren't allowed to go, and so there were some people that I would buy certain stuff for that I knew like their parents wouldn't want them to have this, but like secretly try to like, hey, like, here's this album that's like really, you know, like, you know, like, here's this CD, or like, here's this pipe, or here's this thing, you know, like, I try to like, or here's a lighter and like stuff that was like, stuff that they weren't really allowed to have because their parents were so strict. And then like, I would just go do it anyways and just help them to do what they wanted to do a little bit. Like, I was like, I don't really care. It's not really a big deal. But, like, once I got a certain age and then some friends were maybe younger, and then I remember like some friends, I would buy them like alcohol or like chewing tobacco and stuff like that, like, because that's what they wanted. And it was like, I don't really care if this is what you want, like, it doesn't bother me any. But they weren't like smoking and drinking and stuff like that around me. They would just like take it home and like hide it or whatever. But there was some stuff like that. But I mean, that I would say is probably not legal. In all honesty, that probably wasn't legal to do. I don't think you're supposed to give like certain things to minors. Like, they weren't like that young. They were like a year younger than me maybe, but still they weren't like legally able to buy it themselves. Or even some friends that were allowed to buy it themselves, but like, I would just buy it for them just because they weren't, allowed. I don't know if I was allowed either, but like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't allowed, but I wasn't buying it for myself, so it was like, I don't think it really registered. But yeah, that kind of stuff. Well, I'm gonna end this episode. Alrighty.